Thanks for listening to Learning is the New Working. It's a podcast about the future of learning at work and the people help making it cool. This podcast is brought to you by the Learning Futures Group and by me, Chris Pirrie. This episode is part of our Season 6, an occasional season about the implications of the global pandemic on the future of work and workplace learning. Our guest today, though, might feature in any one of our thematic seasons given his history and breadth of impact on our profession. He's Bill Pelster. Bill is co-founder of the Josh Bersin Academy, an organization that he founded in 2019 along with his longtime collaborator Josh Bersin. Their aim was to elevate the HR profession by providing future-focused professional development, curated resources, and linking together the global community of around 10 million HR professionals.
Do we really understand the outsized impact we can have on many people's lives? Beyond, it's not the transactional side of HR, but when we get career development and talent management and learning and upskilling correct for an organization, it's not solving one problem. We could potentially be impacting and changing the lives of 10, 50, 100,000 individuals in your organization.
I think we're all familiar with Josh as a thought leader in our space, but Mr. Pelster has had an equally large impact. He's been a quiet force for innovation and also a pioneer with large professional services firms with key roles, including building a human capital practice in India, an international deployment to build human capital practice in Germany, and the creation of a learning and leadership practice within a Big Four company. He was the Chief Learning Officer at Deloitte, and he was also responsible for the acquisition of Bersin and Associates, which was Deloitte's first move into products and subscription businesses. Bill was also the key architect, with a small a, of Deloitte University. It's a $300 million learning facility outside of Dallas, Texas. It's really an extraordinary counter-trend example of a corporate investment in a physical university.
We thought a lot about flow. Like a river flows and finds natural tributaries, how can we create those natural meeting spots, not for an individual, but for an impromptu group of 2 or 3 coming together? They're meeting, making new connections, which we felt was as valuable as the formal learning that was going on inside the classroom.
He also was involved in creating the satellite facilities in Belgium, India, Canada, and Singapore that grew out of the success of the Dallas campus. I talked to Bill today about making the space to learn, including physical spaces that promote learning and collaboration and well-being. I talk about the impact of the pandemic on our discipline in general, and we talk about his aspirations and the progress that they're making at the Josh Bersin Academy, as well as Bill's thoughts on the future of work. He's a fascinating guy. It's always worth listening to Bill. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Bill Pelster. Bill Pelster, welcome to Learning is the New Working. Thanks so much for your time and sharing your insights with the audience today. So I guess first of all is, how are you and your family and the team at JBA doing?
We're doing fantastic and growing. I have to just really in awe with the amount of demand for just really good advice around HR and just connecting HR professionals around the world.
Yeah, I mean, such an incredible time for anybody who has a people function in an organization over the last 12 months. I guess you guys in many ways were really perfectly set up. Let's do a few quick questions just to sketch out your work practice for people. I always start with the question, what part of the world do you live and work in and why?
I live in the same part of the world you do, and probably for all the same reasons. I live up here in the Pacific Northwest, just right outside of Seattle, and really is my childhood home. And wasn't born here, but grew up here, and just absolutely fell in love with the place. The people are fantastic. It's a really diverse area, a lot of Asian influence, high tech. Boeing in the early days and Microsoft and Amazon later on. It's a great combination of high-tech, still Northwest casual, and a lot of nature surrounding you very, very quickly. So just love the area.
Love the Pacific Northwest. Bill, what is your job title now, and how would you describe the work that you do?
When you're doing a startup, we have like 47 different job titles. So some days I'm the chief janitor. Other days I might be the architect around some of the client strategies we're doing. But essentially, the co-founder of the Academy with Josh Bersin.
You should probably just sketch out your major career steps before doing that, because you come into this academy position with just a little bit of credibility and experience. So tell us your major career steps.
Yeah, like most people in the HR field, we find that you actually didn't start out to be in HR and you didn't study anything directly relevant to HR in university. So if you go back into the Wayback Machine to the 80s when computer science was still kind of in its young infancy, I got my computer science degree. I ended up in the Air Force, on the nuclear side of the Air Force during the Cold War, and so I can take you down a path of many stories there. But it gave me the technical background and also a chance to earn my MBA with an emphasis in finance. And so, again, not traditional things that you would expect from an HR professional. In the early 90s, we were all facing Y2K. If you can think back to that, when the power plants were going to shut down and everything was going to fall out of the sky and it was going to be disaster at just the strike of midnight, and none of it happened, right? But when I transitioned out of the Air Force, I was hired by Price Waterhouse at the time to do SAP work, just given all the Y2K remediation that was going on. Really in the finance area in 3.1H for anybody that goes way back and knows SAP in the early days. And early on, I started focusing on the people issues on the project, because the IT side we could actually kind of structure and deal with, but these darn people were always, they brought challenges and different perspectives, and someone had to deal with it. And I just kind of gravitated towards that. So essentially helped found the whole people practice at Price Waterhouse. That became PricewaterhouseCoopers. I moved over to Deloitte because I wanted to stay in a partnership model. Helped really grow and scale their human capital practice. Along the way, had a couple of opportunities for some really interesting assignments, one of them being the chief learning officer around Deloitte University. So when we reimagined the role that learning would play in attracting and developing professionals, I got to be front and center in that and got to see a lot of wonderful things happen and lead many of those initiatives that ended up as Deloitte University. Also had the opportunity to do some acquisitions like Bersin and Associates. So everybody who knows Josh Bersin, he became Bersin by Deloitte, and I was the partner who led that acquisition, integrated the business, and scaled our whole talent practice really around Josh's team there. Got elected to the board, the Deloitte consulting side. It has multiple international assignments in India and Germany, and just really benefited from a long-term relationship with Deloitte, and finally retired a couple of years ago to launch the Josh Bersin Academy with Josh.
Great. Well, we're definitely going to dive in on the academy and then a little bit about the university as well, if we have the time to do that. Last quick question, though, is what do you miss most about following the changes that were wrought on us in 2020?
I really miss the physical human interaction. As much as we complained about airplane travel and we were on airplanes all the time, there was something about, being together in a conference room, working on a problem with a group of professionals, and at the end of the day, being able to go out to dinner and maybe have a drink and just kind of celebrate that we made some kind of achievement. It's great to do that virtually, but it's a little bit lacking, and I'm actually looking forward to doing a little bit of travel again.
Yeah, you're a big traveler. I know that. You and me both. Let's talk about the Academy. Founded, I think, just over a year ago. Is that right?
And, about 2 years ago now. Yep.
2 years. Oh, my gosh. And then can you talk about what your objectives were as you move into and where are you as you move into your third year of operation?
Yeah, so when the objective of the Academy is really simple, and Josh and I both noticed there is a large global community, and depending on how you count, it might be 10 million, 15 million, maybe 20 million professionals out there that have either HR or learning or talent in their job title or in their job description. So they're involved in this, and they are a huge lever for change inside of an organization, just given the power and position that they have to really impact the organization. And when we looked around, one of the things that just kept coming back in so many informal conversations was there really wasn't a cohesive view on how do you develop professionals on those more ambiguous, forward-looking topics, right? We know where to go if we need to understand how to write a job description or the latest on, compliance issues and stuff like that. But when you're talking about, the workforce is changing, how do we create a competitive people strategy? What is really the role of AI and workflows as we reimagine the whole employee experience? What does it mean to have a consumer-grade employee experience? There's a whole list of topics that HR professionals, we're collectively trying to get our arms wrapped around. And so what we wanted to do, and it really was more of a, I say it kind of a gentleman's hobby, was, how can, in retirement, how can we use our connections and our networks to bring people together to talk about these items and collectively maybe advance the thought process on how to solve them, right? One of the things that we find is HR professionals, unlike most functions in an organization, are actually really open to talking about their issues and their challenges and what they're facing, and they're hungry to learn. So we figured, let's launch the Academy. Maybe one person would sign up, maybe thousands would sign up. But if we could start connecting the world of HR in a way that is not connected today on these really forward-looking topics, then maybe we could advance the profession and become the world's home for HR around all these conversations.
And for people who haven't checked it out yet, and obviously we're encouraging people to do that, can you describe the overall architecture, the sort of experience of being a member of the Josh Bersin Academy?
One of the things, we actually gave a lot of thought process to the word academy. And I would say Josh is probably a couple of years ahead of his time here because now academy is popping up everywhere, right? But the thought process was that this is more than just learning. And so when we envisioned the academy, there were really three components that came to mind as we thought about it and talked to a lot of people and worked with a variety of partners to imagine this. The first one was, if you want professional development on these forward-looking topics, can we democratize that and make it easily accessible to anybody? So if you really want to know how to create an agile learning organization, this is a really inexpensive way to come in and take a formal learning program and understand the components and get some case studies. And we'll walk you through a formal development program that's, let's say 5 to 7 formal hours over 6 to 10 weeks, right? And there's a lot of social component of this as you're learning from each other. So if you want professional development, that's one tick. The second thing, and this is the important distinction as to why we chose the Academy, there's two other components that we feel are important. The second one is this should also be the home of best practices and ways to help you when you're on the job. So if you are an HR professional, an HR generalist working in a plant in Taiwan, and somebody's asking you a question that you may not be the expert on, where can you go other than just, Googling it and getting 1,000 or 1,000,000 hits? Where can you go for a trusted resource that in 5 to 7 minutes you can get a download on what this topic is, how companies are thinking about it, are there any resources attached to it? So we created a whole area of the Academy that was really designed to support you on the job in the moment of need, so kind of in that flow of work. And then the third area is, HR people just like to talk to each other. And so the third part is enabling a social feature that allows any HR professional to really either join a conversation that's in progress or to kick off a topic that they are interested in, and other HR professionals jump in and start offering their perspective. These aren't people that are out there trolling you. Everybody's a member of the Academy, so the advice and perspective you're getting is, in a matter of minutes, you can basically crowdsource among other professionals some of the things that you're really wanting to learn about.
A lot of organizations are using this as a model for their own programs, this sort of blend of community interaction, communities of practice, and then content as well. I really love that. The world is a bit different now from when you kicked off 2 years ago. What have you learned, and how is the program evolving, if at all, based on feedback?
So a couple of things, right? So sometimes there's just blind luck, right? You have an idea, you put it out there, and who knew that, in March of 2020, the world was going to be turned upside down, and HR was not going to be part of the team. They were going to have to lead the team, right? And so the number of companies, and I think, directionally 350 companies kind of reached out in a matter of just a couple of weeks, and it's like, what is everybody else doing on all these return to work, COVID, working mobile, I got to keep the factory. There was just 1,000 questions, and we were all really quickly trying to figure this out, right? And so the power of the Academy was we were able to convene a whole series of working groups around top-of-mind topics, and we ended up calling it the Big Reset because it was a reset that was forced upon us. But through these working groups, and we did 3 rounds of them, we've published 3 research reports in essentially about 120 days that captured the best ideas and insights and the debates that were occurring, first around COVID and the response and what's happening. So we captured 20 best practices there. Then as we were kind of going through that, this was not going to be over in a few months and it's going to stick with us for a while. So what are the longer term implications and how are we thinking about, performance management and talent management? And my God, people that we have employed in the Bay Area and are paying at the Bay Area are now living in Oklahoma. And we have no idea where people are at. There's regulatory issues and how do we start to corral that and provide policy and guidance. And at the same time, work has to go